Episode 4 of The Rings of Power is out now, so let's have a breakdown of what happened in this episode.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Hello guys, I hope you are all doing very well today, and I hope you are able to enjoy The Rings of Power on how it has gone so far. We are now halfway through the first season. We have just had episode 4 release, so I thought it would be good to go through just what happened in this episode, what some of these things may mean, and maybe we can all have a discussion on what some of the secret meanings behind everything come down to. So, we start the episode on Numenor with the blessing of the children. Here, Miriel is taking in and accepting the new children of their peoples, hoping to have them live a great life on the island and really be wonderful members of the people of Numenor. They do name the one baby as Alinel, but that name does not appear to have any specific reference from what I can tell. I don't think that all the blessing of the children do reference anything in particular, but if you do know something that I may have missed, then please let me know that down in the comments below. This though is when it gets revealed that this is in fact a dream sequence of the drowning of Numenor, and to be honest, that part looks really cool when we see the waves hitting the land. However, Miriel then wakes up and it cuts to the guildsman outside in Numenor talking about how badly this elf that has come here is affecting the people with the fact she is still on their island, and maybe that in fact Miriel is taking orders from her. It's a bit of a sign of the upcoming split that will happen of the King's Men and the Faithful, which if you would like to know more on at this stage, why not check out our video on the full story of the Second Age or our videos on Numenor. However, we then get to see Eärien, who appears to be watching all of this very keenly. She doesn't seem to show a sign of if she's for or against them, but just seems to be paying very close attention. This may well also point to that she will at one point maybe side with the opposite side to Elendil and Isildur. Maybe she'll go towards the King's Men and actually cause a division in their family, because this may also get hinted by with that we then meet Kemen, who is in this story the son of Pharazôn. He finds his father in the market and tells him that they have to go and deal with this problem, which is obviously the guildsman trying to speak against the elf, trying to persuade people that if they start letting elves in, they will take their jobs, they will take everything off them as they don't tire, they don't age, they will be replaced. Their queen is turning into an elf lover, the opposite to what she should be according to them. Pharazôn does manage to talk down this gaggle of mewling children though with a great speech where he mentions the likes of Alros and Morgoth and the raising of Armenelos. Truly a man capable of a rousing speech that I'm sure we will see much more of in the future. And still here, Eärien watches keenly, which is where she meets Kemen. I feel this is really clearly setting up that there will be a love interest story between the two, having the created son of Pharazôn and the created daughter of Elendil for this story coming together to raise tensions between these two. Again, you can just really see where the future tensions are going to come from. Miriel though is now with Galadriel and Elendil, revealing to her the scrolls that they had found about Sauron and Mordor. Galadriel reveals to Miriel that she believes Halbrand to also be the lost heir in exile to the throne of the Southlands. Galadriel wants Miriel to back them in taking the fight to the Southlands, to finish the task left undone, to prevent Sauron from taking those lands and being able to raise up any kind of army again. Although, Miriel is not keen on this idea at all. But Galadriel does hint to her that not all Numenorians truly follow her beliefs. Some of them want to go back to the old, faithful ways. As Miriel then walks away from Galadriel after saying that their meeting is done, Galadriel has a moment where she closes her eyes, regains her thoughts, digs deep, and comes out with, "I want to speak to your father, the true king." She demands this, instead of having to speak to this queen regent in front of her. Of course, this angers Miriel, and Galadriel now ends up in jail, just as the mightiest and fairest of all the elves that really remained in Middle-earth should act. Just seems right on point, doesn't it? But this then leads to her being back into close proximity with Halbrand. But from here we are now out at the sea, and we see Isildur's mind wander once again as he hears that woman's voice whisper Isildur. This is while he is staring at the island. He stares back into this, loses his mind a bit, and lets go of the rope. It appears to me at least that this was a deliberate decision after believing that this woman's voice is telling him to go back, telling him he should not go out to sea. But what he doesn't realise is this action not just gets him kicked out of the Sea Guard, which is what he wanted, but also his two friends, Valandil and Ontamo. Now we really see how Isildur got to where he has got to in his life. It is all because of Elendil. This was hinted to before, but it is emphasised again now. He has not earned the passages that he has taken, he has been gifted them. This is when you compare it to someone like Valandil, who has worked his whole life with the goal and wish to become a part of the Sea Guard. And Isildur never really wanted it until late, and then he just got thrust in there. But yet it is Isildur who gets him kicked out. You could see how this is a testing time for their friendship, but we must assume that in the future, these two friends will reconcile. That is, of course, if Isildur does truly name in this story as well his youngest son Valandil, as we can only presume this is going to be after one of his best friends. Will this maybe mean a sacrifice at some point? Maybe he'll see him die badly and it will really affect him, but it would be a nice nod if this is why his youngest gains that name. But now we come to the Southlands, and here we have Arondir in chains. The Orcs obviously still look absolutely brilliant and terrifying here, still easily one of the best parts of the show. But now we get to finally meet Adar, and not just a blurry shot either. We see straight away his elven ears, with half his face also being covered in scars. He shows care for the dying orc and puts it out of his misery. He very much appears as though he cares for these creatures, these irredeemable creatures, so you're made to believe. Maybe he knows that they were once like him, but they had been twisted, so he wishes to try and save them. Maybe he even thinks they can be redeemable, or perhaps there might even be some greater reason for his methods. I do love the idea of a darker elf, one that has been twisted by what they've seen before, and one that has maybe even fallen to the darker side of things. I just hope they don't go as far as having anything like a redeemable orc. To me, that's just one step too far, but that may just be me. But as for the story itself, an orc comes over to the dead body now and says Nampak Uglursha. But I cannot seem to find any kind of translation from the Black speech yet, so please, again, leave me a comment below if you actually know what this means. I would be very curious to know. However, they take the body away, and this means that Adar and Arondir now have time to talk. Arondir reveals that he was in fact born in Beleriand, with Adar asking if it was by the mouth of the river. But instead of a second response, Arondir asks his own question, and one that we would all love to know. Who are you? There are so many rumours about this elf. Is Adar truly Sauron? Could he in fact be an elf like Maiglin? One that maybe breaks canon as such, but also one that Amazon might not be too scared to bring in. Or is he just a completely original character that may end up becoming someone that we are slightly aware of later, or just something completely 100% new? Regardless, at this stage though, his dialogue was wonderful, and Adar is just a treat. We now catch up with Bronwyn and the other Southlanders at Arondir's old watchtower, and we get a nice name drop here as well of Orodruin, with Bronwyn saying, "Every village from here to Orodruin has come to them for safety." The people are basically all out of food though, and here Theo suggests going back to their village to gather what food was still there. Bronwyn asks Theo to stop making things harder for her, but he still goes straight off with his friend to do what he thinks is best. As they arrive, they witness a lot of beheaded and rotting animals though, already putting fear into his friend. They manage to collect bags, but Theo also wants to look in the tavern, which he does alone. And surprise, surprise, he gets attacked by an orc here, while his friend Rowan runs off with the food. This orc is of course the legendary Jed Brophy, who has worked on the likes of The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and now The Rings of Power 2. He is a true legend to this world. But anyway, we get Theo pull out the broken hilt and cut himself to have the blade form. This shows Theo could be more willing to give himself into the evil of things for the reward of power. However, Theo does run when he can and hides in the well that we saw Arondir and Bronwyn at in an earlier episode. We finally again get to return to Khazad-dûm and their storyline, but with a pit stop in Eregion first, where we get a first glimpse at the forge being built with the elves and dwarves working together. Celebrimbor has a nice moment here by bringing up Eärendil comparing Elrond to him, even how he once said to Celebrimbor that his future would be in the hands of his own son, which only comes back to Celebrimbor at this time. It is revealed as well that Durin is in fact avoiding or hiding something from Celebrimbor, so we then get to see a scene with Elrond and Disa. Again, another great original character for the series that I am very much enjoying. Disa attempts to deceive Elrond, which Elrond can clearly see through, but he accepts it nonetheless. At this point, we hear Disa's children chanting a rhyme: "Rich crone, kiss the stone, polish your gems and gold," which will become important in a minute. We then cut to Durin and Disa talking, where the old mine is mentioned, which is in fact where Durin has truly been, and it is revealed that Elrond can lip read this from afar. "The old mine below the Mirrormere," Elrond says to himself. And the Mirrormere is the lake that Durin the First saw, and he decided to build Khazad-dûm at that point. So this is a very important location for the dwarves, and the fact this old mine is located below it shows it is very significant. So from here, Elrond heads straight there, where he sees footprints go into the wall. At this point, he manages to deduce that the rhyme that the kids were chanting back at Disa's is the way to enter the mine. He chants this, taps on the wall, and enters, only to then be confronted by Durin himself. Elrond wishes to know what is being hidden from him, but Durin will only reveal this if he swears an oath to tell no living soul, to which Elrond agrees. This is when we discover it was in fact Mithril in that box. And not just this, but it was Disa who discovered this all for the very first time. Durin even lets Elrond keep a sample as a token of their friendship. At this time though, the ground starts to shake. You may think Balrog, but no, not yet. It is in fact a mine collapsing below, and Durin charges straight in to save them. We now jump back over the sea to Numenor, now with Eärien. She bumps into Kemen once again, strengthening their bond. But now back in jail, Halbrand makes Galadriel aware that it was the subject of Miriel's father that caused her anger and not anything else. She had angered her before, never to the point of jail until this moment. Halbrand seems quite aware of what may have been said, despite the fact that he was in his cell the entire time. Maybe Halbrand and Galadriel discussed this before this scene, but otherwise it seems strange he is aware of such information. Pharazôn though then comes for a visit, saying that Galadriel will be sent back to the elves as she is let out. She then single-handedly takes on 4 armed Numenorian guards. Yep. She then throws them into the cell that she was then taken out of. Yep. And just as this happens, Halbrand whispers over the shoulder of Pharazôn, almost like they are hinting at something that may come to pass in the future, how he could end up being advisor to someone powerful. I wonder what that could be saying. However, we now get to come back to Isildur and Eärien as they have a nice chat about how he still wants to go to the west of Numenor, but feels like he has disgraced their family, so should no longer be allowed to go. Just as soldiers announce to the public the elf has escaped. This is now a moment where we go full on Assassin's Creed as Galadriel climbs the outside of the tower to break in and see Miriel with her father, Palantir. He is shown to be very sick, and this helps Galadriel soften towards Miriel. Miriel goes on to reveal she was chosen to replace her father on the throne because her father's allegiance to the elves was becoming too much, and his plans were to go back to the old ways. Also, as a bonus here, it does appear as though Galadriel sees Narsil here, what will eventually become Anduril, Aragorn's sword. I mean, it very much looks alike, so this could well be a hint at Elendil receiving the sword in the future. She shows Galadriel that she actually also has a Palantir here too. Miriel reveals there are 7 seeing stones, but the other 6 are lost or hidden. Which is interesting, as Elendil is said to have taken 7 stones with him when he escapes to Middle-earth after the downfall of Numenor, maybe hinting that he will go on and find the other 6 later in the show before this event. Galadriel sees the same drowning vision that Miriel does now when she touches the Palantir, and Miriel says how she saw that the beginning of the downfall of Numenor was with the coming of Galadriel to that island. However, it is not specifically said if this is due to Galadriel herself, or maybe just someone that she arrived with. It shows why though Galadriel needs to be sent away in the mind of Miriel. But Galadriel does not want Miriel to follow the path of fear, even though it is easier said than done when that path affects a kingdom, not just one person. Returning to the Southlands now, Rowan has returned to the Watchtower with the food, saying that Theo should have been just behind him. Cutting then to Theo, he, for God knows what reason, decides that in the dark is the time to try and escape from the Orcs. This segment felt very stealth game-like. The Orcs seem nicely terrifying here as they do, but Theo seemed like just a bit of an idiot, especially when grabbing the food sack. He is injured, he needs to run. Added weight like that with a limp just makes no sense. He does manage though to nearly escape until Jed Brophy's wrath catches him at the last minute. However, at the last minute again, Theo gets saved by the returning Arondir. They then make a run for it, with the many slow-mo shots going through the forest, and we do get some cool shots mixed in with this too, but maybe there was just a bit of a slow-mo overload at this point. Bronwyn also appears here as well, and helps them retreat to the tree line. As they get into the open, the sun comes up and stops the Orcs at the tree line, therefore the 3 can now make their escape. Back to the Khazad-dûm story though, as we get to see Disa at work singing to the stone, with then having the word the dwarves have survived. All of those who had been trapped are okay. Here Prince Durin reveals he holds down so much frustration with his father, how he would sometimes happily never speak to him again. But here, Elrond comes out with a great story about Eärendil, his greatest feat, journeying to Valinor and pleading with the Valar themselves, and how, now that he is put up in the sky, he looks up to those stars and will give anything to speak to him again to understand if he is truly making him proud. Durin should not underestimate the time he has with his father while he is still there. This is a beautiful moment for those two, and this scene is ended very nicely with the story of how Elrond and Durin met, and both of their accounts of that. We then get a conversation between Prince and King Durin, and we get an attempt to explain why there are in fact 2 Durins at the same time. As for those of you who don't know, the dwarves named Durin should be reincarnations of Durin the Deathless, but they should not appear at the same time. Obviously, if they're reincarnations, that shouldn't be possible. But they do try and explain it off. They say how it is the passing of the crown that leads to the voices of their ancestors coming into them and heeding their advice, not so much by the birth of a new one. So it is, in essence, the crown that makes it possible. I guess that's just their way of doing it. Prince Durin though then reveals that Elrond has invited him to go to Lindon and asks advice on if he should do so, to which the king says yes, as they both share the same intuition that is telling them something is off with the elves, so he should go to find out what that is. In the Southlands now for the last time, we have Arondir and Bronwyn discuss the message that Adar sent with him, how they must swear fealty to him or run. We also get Theo talk with Waldreg, revealing that Waldreg had also stabbed himself with the broken hilt. The taint of Morgoth is still clear here. He truly believes Sauron will return as well. The starfall that they saw means it is nearly time for his return, and they need to be ready. They need to save their strength for what is coming. From here, we also cut back to the Orcs and Adar, revealing that they do in fact know that the hilt is at the Watchtower too. I can definitely see a battle coming. And now for the final time back on Numenor, we see what appears to be Galadriel sent away on a ship, only for the petals of the white tree to fall and convince Miriel that instead it is a message from the Valar. The tears of the Valar are represented by the petals falling, and so Numenor should assist Galadriel in her mission and not just send her away. Elendil asks for volunteers. Valandil does so first, then his friend, and then Isildur, and after that, many many more. So that really sums up the episode. We had some great and some not so great moments from Numenor, the Southlands and Khazad-dûm. We had the great things like that of any scenes with Elrond, Disa and Durin in. I will admit this is very much my favourite storyline at the moment. I love the 3 characters, I love the actors, and I even love King Durin. King Durin is what I see as more of a actual Tolkien dwarf, as though if the ones off the pages were put accurately. Yes, we get the great characters we have, but I love to see this more serious version as well. I feel like as a group, or as an entire storyline, Khazad-dûm is just on point. And as well, you cannot forget how good Adar has been in this episode. He has set himself up brilliantly to be a powerful foe and someone that they will fear. Everything about his delivery and the actor is just spot on for him, and I cannot wait to see more. Which of course also leads on to the Orcs again. I've said it before, I will say it again. They look and act awesome, and every time they're on screen, the show is better for it. But of course that does also mean there are some not so great moments that come with it too. And sadly, these do keep coming with Galadriel. Now, I did want to like Galadriel so much in this show. She is supposed to be such a main character. But the decision making that comes from the character just does not sit right with me. And it doesn't seem to be improving either. In the first couple of episodes, I could maybe have made sense of it. She was mourning, she was on a path of vengeance. But the fact she's gotten to Numenor and she is still acting in a slightly childish and petty way, just like I said, does not really sit right with me, and I feel like they need to turn her character around. I understand there will be character growth to get her to that character like we know from The Lord of the Rings, but I feel like considering how old she is and everything she has been through, it is just too much of a jump for her to be making. I'm not saying that it's impossible for them to do, they have just given themselves a very uphill task to get it to be accepted. Another part of the episode that I felt was a little bit weak was that of Theo and his escape. I just did not enjoy this segment at all. It felt so game-like to me. It felt very convenient. The fact he could just go behind a wall, an orc would walk past, he would go past again, and that orc would probably have just seen him move, but it doesn't matter because he's off camera now. It just didn't feel right, and Theo as a character, to me, is just a bit frustrating. I love the Southlands storyline. I love the idea of Mordor being overrun by the orcs again and being turned for what was a land where men could live into one that will become inhabitable for anyone but really the orcs. However, Theo is just that weak point to me. And the other, maybe not negative point, but one that slightly frustrates me, is that Halbrand is being hinted more and more as Sauron. We did put up a video a couple of days ago discussing the theories about who Halbrand could really be. I love the idea that he could end up being an ancestor of those from Rohan or the King of the Dead, but I feel this episode showed so many signs for him being Sauron. That moment where he's in the cage, whispering over Farazon's shoulder and making him accept what he says, really hints to that corrupted advisor in the Numenorian king's ear to me. I feel like there's just so much foreshadowing for him to be Sauron, it's getting harder and harder to ignore. All in all though, I did enjoy this episode. The moments that just went against it were just very hard to ignore. I feel like this very much sits on an average kind of scale of where the series has been so far. I definitely don't think it stood above the rest, but I definitely don't think it was the worst, although it was right down there with potentially episode 1 as well. But really, at this point, I would just love to know what all of you really think. Are you thinking the show is getting better and better with each episode? With this one, I have seen a very mixed reaction. Some people think this is the best episode to come out yet. Some people think the opposite. It's funny how this show can split people so much. So please, just leave me a comment below of whatever you are thinking. And so with that, I'm not going to take up any more of your time today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the idea of doing breakdowns for them. And let me know if you want to see more in the future for the rest of the season. So with that, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.